Hello, everyone. This is Independent Conservative. Thank you all for joining me once again. So I want to get right into this discussion with Kevin Hart. And apparently he was on The Breakfast Club and he was talking to Charlemagne. And he's basically defending this comedian by the name of Tony Hinchcliffe for some jokes he made. Apparently made some jokes about George Floyd. Now, what those jokes were, I don't know. I didn't watch the show. But apparently Kevin Hart is coming into the defense of this comedian. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to read a little bit of this article with you guys. And this was during the roasting, roasting sketch. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to read a little bit of this article. And I'm going to let you guys listen in on a couple of audio clips from Kevin Hart on The Breakfast Club, and then another one from Tony Hinchcliffe. Hinchcliffe, that's his name. Hinchcliffe, I think that's how I pronounce his name, from TMZ. And you guys chime in on it because I want to chime in on this whole comedian situation, this whole idea about comedy, and I'm going to give my opinion on that. But right now, let's get right into this article. Kevin Hart is still backing fellow comedian Tony Hinchcliffe, who fell under attack over his joke about George Floyd during Netflix The Roast of Kevin Hart a few weeks ago. Okay, now this may be a little delayed. I may be getting on this bandwagon a little late, but better late than never. Well, yeah, the George Floyd joke, it wasn't a tasteful joke to our culture, to our audience, Hart said during a recent appearance on The Breakfast Club, adding, but our audience that's watching the roast, if you're watching the roast, you get why they're doing it. You get why the racial humor is on the table. So let me let you guys listen in on this audio clip here of what he actually said. It's about a couple of minutes. It's very interesting because what he's saying, you got to take into consideration. I'm not a big fan. I'm not a big fan of Kevin Hart, but what he's saying makes a lot of sense, in my opinion.
Yeah, the George Floyd joke, it wasn't a tasteful joke to our culture, to our audience, but our audience that's watching the roast, if you're watching the roast, you get why they're doing it. You get why the racial humor is on the table. Like, it's not, I wasn't shocked. Like, that's what they do. Go look at the Tom Brady one. Like, that's what they do. It happens every year when they do a roast. It's not new. This isn't it's not a new agenda. It's not a new approach to comedy.
Do you feel like Tony Hinchcliffe went too far when he made that joke about George Floyd?
It's Tony Hinchcliffe.
Yeah.
Like, I don't expect less. I don't expect more.
I feel like you're saying going too far is the point. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Yes, I mean, that's why you're there. Mm-hmm. And I hate to say this, but I'm going to because we're being honest. People are talking about that joke. Talk about his set. Tony Hinchcliffe arguably had the best set, or one of the best sets, between Tony and Cheryl, and I would say Naeem had a really strong set.
Naeem had a very strong set. I was laughing out loud at Tony until that joke.
Until the joke.
But not even just that joke. I don't like when people joke about violent, tragic death. I like Pete said, and then I was like, why you had to say that?
Okay, now Charlemagne says he don't like when people joke about violent death. Okay, violent death. Obviously, he's talking about George Floyd. Now, let me chime in on this, okay? Yeah, and what I'm going to have to say, some people are not going to like it. And if you're liberal and you're watching this, of course you're not going to like it. And I don't expect you to. But here's the thing. I guarantee you this. If there was jokes made about Charlie Kirk, which accordingly there were jokes made about him, okay, and his death, it wasn't. They wouldn't have been offended by it. Charlemagne wouldn't have had a problem with it. He would have acted like he would have had a problem with it, but deep in his heart, and I can tell the expression on people's face. I read people's faces. It doesn't matter because to him, Charlie Kirk was a racist. So, hey, he died a horrible, horrible death. Okay, and yet it wouldn't have meant anything. But he makes this comment about George Floyd. Now, let me say this about George Floyd. George Floyd, unfortunately, it was unfortunate. Let me clarify myself here, so the mother won't think I'm ultra sensitive. I mean, ultra insensitive, rather. It was unfortunate that George Floyd lost his life. That's anybody that loses their life for any kind of reason. It's unfortunate because, and the reason why I say it's unfortunate is because that's a soul, and if that person is not saved, if they don't know the Lord, they're going to be lost. And I know that people don't. Well, what are you talking about? Well, that's just what I believe. It is what it is. Okay. So that's the main thing. But the situation with George Floyd, number one, George Floyd and Charlie Kirk. Let me show these two differences here. The death of George Floyd, the death of Charlie Kirk. I would argue that the death of Charlie Kirk was more violent than the death of George Floyd. Here's the reason why I say that. And I would be either one, joking about either one, we're going to talk about that. But I would argue that Charlie Kirk's death was more violent than George Floyd's. I actually saw the video of Charlie Kirk's death. Somebody showed me the video. And they showed the bullet hitting him in the neck and him falling down. All I saw of George Floyd was a police officer with his knee on his neck. That's it. I didn't see no struggles. I didn't see any of that. Now, when I looked at other sources, what I found out was that George Floyd was, someone had basically said that George Floyd was using counterfeit money or whatever to buy whatever, and that prior to this situation, he was high off of fentanyl. Police approached him. He resisted arrest, like a lot of us do. We resist arrest for dumb reasons, and it escalated. And the police officer, whose name I can't remember, ended up doing something, and he ended up with his knee on his neck, which is actually a procedure that was used by the police. I know because I was trained in it. And it's not designed to suffocate you. I've said that 1,000 times. It's not designed to suffocate you or cut the airflow off of your neck. It's designed to restrain the person. That's essentially what it's designed to do, to restrain you, but whatever. Okay, that's all I saw. George Floyd was resisting. These are the facts. He was resisting arrest, and he was high off of fentanyl. Now, whether or not the police officer's knee on his neck contributed to his death can be argued. But I will say this, it wasn't all that violent as compared to Charlie Kirk's death. And yet, Charlemagne here is bothered by the fact that a joke was made about George Floyd by this other comedian. And I find that to be just as biased as anything. Okay? Neither one of them, we could go all day with that. But the point is simply this. It's these people come off as two-faced, It's come off as two-faced, man, because come on, Charlemagne, because if it had been Charlie Kirk, it wouldn't have been an issue. If it had been somebody on the right, it wouldn't have been, you wouldn't have cared if anybody had joked about it. But let it be George Floyd, a man who was actually a criminal at the time of his arrest, at the time of his death. He was a criminal. And what do we have? We have all kinds of murals, and I think even a street was named after the man. Really? Really? And yet when people talk about trying to make murals or make Charlie Kirk a holiday after Charlie Kirk or whatever, or a day, whatever, to recognize him and honor him, it's a big hoopla. See, I think that's hypocritical. That's hypocritical because whether people like Charlie Kirk or not, or whether they think he's a racist or not, he certainly contributed more to humanity than George Floyd did. But I ain't going to get into all of that. I know people don't like it, but look, that's just the way I feel about it. And I feel that way and think that way because of the facts that I have portrayed before, that I have before me and that I've studied. Now, if other people got other facts that they want to bring up about how innocent George Floyd was, then please tell me. But he was not innocent. Charlie Kirk was, but George Floyd was not. Let's go on.
I mean, Pete had a great set too. Pete had a Charlie Kirk joke in there. Yeah. Like, would I tell those jokes? No. But do I get why they're being told? Mm-hmm. Yes. Like, I'm not looking at Pete crazy. I'm not looking at Tony crazy. Like, that's what, I know what you're going to do. Mm-hmm. I know your style of comedy. I'm going to appreciate humor. I don't get affected by the attempt of humor. I get it, right? In this case, like, do more. It's my production. We're live. The more is what? Like, what is it that you expect me? You want me to take a live production and stand up and fight Tony or have a reaction? Like, Tony told a joke. It wasn't a tasteful joke to us. We didn't like it. Okay. Hey, man, fuck that joke.
Okay, I wanted to say this. He says, it wasn't a tasteful joke to us. Let me say this about this, okay? Whatever joke this man said, I don't know. I didn't hear the joke about George Floyd. But I hate this when people use, whether they be white or black, this us. In other words, it's always, I've noticed this, it's always taken as a form of solidarity when another black person dies or whatever. Usually someone that is not all that honorable, like George Floyd. I'm trying to put this in a way where people understand. But I'm hoping y'all get what I'm trying to say. When something happens to another black person, it's always, everybody's associated with that black person. If this black person gets shot, it's me that got shot. It's us that got shot. If this black person is being abused, it's us that's being abused, right? Supposedly being abused. If this black person is discriminated against, supposedly discriminated against, it's us that's discriminated against. And I could understand that to some extent way back in the 1920s and 30s and 40s. I could kind of understand that. But those days, I believe, are over large scale. You may have pockets of it, isolated incidents, because we have what's called human beings in this world, flawed human beings, white, black, Hispanic, whatever, and they're going to do these things. But on a wide scale, no. So to try to connect all black people to the mishaps of another black person who is not all that honorable, to me, is crazy. That's insane. It's offensive to us. Like I said, I didn't hear what the man's joke was. But for me, towards George Floyd, but for me personally, I'm not connected to George Floyd. The only thing that me and George Floyd have that's in common is the fact that we got black skin. Okay, that's it. I mean, or brown skin, really, if you want to be technical about it. That's it. We have no connections that I know of. All right, what happened to him don't necessarily mean it's going to happen to me. And if that situation with George Floyd was a case of injustice, because like I said, it can be argued on either side, but I'm not going to get into it in this video, although I have my own take on it, that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm associated with what happened to the injustice that happened to George Floyd. Because if there was an injustice that happened with George Floyd, that don't necessarily mean that it's going to happen to me or has ever happened to me. And if it did happen to me, what happened to George Floyd and what happened to me in terms of an act of injustice with two white people, that's what it's really boiling down to, is still not related. Because why? Because all white people are not like that. All white people are not racist. All white people don't hate on black people. See, this racial thing, man, keep coming up. It keep coming up. As long as we keep talking about it, when we don't need to be talking about it half the time, it's going to always keep us divided against each other and at each other's throat and hating on each other and disliking each other. It's Marxism right in your face, man. But I ain't going to get into the deepness of Marxism, man. It's the same thing over and over. You got to constantly defend your beliefs and defend this and defend that. You get to the point where you get tired of trying to defend common sense. It makes no sense to me to constantly be trying to defend common sense to people. No matter how you break things down to them, no matter how you explain it, they're still going to hold on to some dumb belief that all white people are racist and systemically racist and that everything that's said negative towards black people is, oh my God, it's the end of the world. Man, come on now. Come on now. But this whole solidarity thing, I can't get with that because we ain't connected. The only people that connected to me is my biological family, my extended family, and my church brothers and church sisters. Okay, and that's it. And guess what? My church brothers and church sisters are white, black, Hispanic, they're all over. Some of my church brothers and sisters live in other countries. I have millions and millions. Let me say this, sidebar. I have millions of church brothers and church sisters, all in different countries and I'm not going to get into the theology of that reality in this video. They're all over the place. I have a huge family that I'm connected to. I'm not connected to any one race, spiritually speaking, okay? But we ain't going to get into that. Or any one ethnic group, rather, because there's only one race, the human race. But anyway, I'm going off there. I'm going off. But you get, I hope some of you people get my point. Let's listen to the rest of what Kevin Hart has to say, and then we're going to move to the Tony guy.
We move on. I don't understand why we stand on a hill and it becomes like this big thing of like, oh man, the motherfuckers, they do this and they're attacking the culture.
Hardness.
It doesn't have to be that.
Language.
It literally is either you're
Kevin
a
Hart.
fan of this level of content or you're not. And if you're not a fan, then you don't watch it.
I mean, come on, man. It makes sense. It made sense what he said. And Charlamagne and the other young lady that was sitting there and the camera panned in on her. What they couldn't say much. They couldn't say much because what he was saying was true. If you're a fan of it, but I'm going to get into the commentary on that. Now let's see what this guy had to say here on TMZ. I guess this is the Tony guy, right? He had some things he had to say.
Kevin Hart was something else, huh? It's the first time I've been called a Nazi.
Now, you can take this however way you want to say it. You can take it as a racial rant or whatever, but or not. However way everybody has different perceptions, but let's go on.
Multiple times in just a few hours. I guess that's what LA writers' rooms, all these, a lot of mentally ill liberals out there that somehow with all these blacks and Jews and Mexicans around me, I guess I'm a Nazi somehow. I guess the guy that pulls names out of a bucket giving everybody an opportunity is a Nazi. Isn't that something? And I got called a Nazi, gay, a racist over and over again. I'm none of those three things. A little fun fact. But they are they are fat, ugly, black, and Jewish. Everything I said was real about them. Just a reminder.
Now let me say this. Now see, and now somebody may take that and be like, "Okay, man, he being racist. What he's saying is, it's the way I see it. Is look, if I say you're black, you black. If you're Mexican, you Mexican. If you fat, you fat. That's the truth. It's true. I'm black. Some of the people that's watching this video, maybe you black. Okay. I mean, if you fat, you fat. That's what he's saying. He's saying it in a joking way, but I get what he's saying. But some people, because of the tone by which he said what he said, that's very sensitive, will be like, you being racist. In what way is he actually being racist? You could argue that he's being racist by the tone by which he says it, but that's a weak argument because he's a comedian. You see, that argument is weak. But anyway, let's go on. Let's go on. In my opinion.
I woke up today, and even though there's news articles, because the news isn't real, nothing is real, that say that I got lit up by Chelsea Handler, which is very, very funny, because that's not what happened at all. You can't believe anything you see or read on the news anymore. You have to actually watch the thing for yourself. She was a bit of a I'll tell you that. She just kept coming at me over. She said I took the Saudi Arabia money. She was like wrong about things. The writers just didn't do her any justice. But then the teleprompter, the fun fact, the teleprompter only went down during my set, and it gave me a lot of opportunity to remind Chelsea Handler what she looks like and where her life is.
That's funny because she's a goofball, as far as I'm concerned. Okay, yeah, that's the clips on there. I mean, people can interpret it whatever they want to interpret. I interpret it in my way. You can interpret it whatever you want to say. You can call me, oh, you a coon, you a sellout, you nothing, you this, you that, man, whatever. Say whatever you want to say. I don't give a flip. You don't, yeah, say whatever you want to say. I don't care. But anyway, I wanted to chat in on both of these here in terms of comedy because I agree with a lot of what Kevin Hart said, and I can understand why this Tony guy said the way he said. I mean, I agree with what he's saying, even though he said it in a joking tone. He was right to some extent. I mean, you know what I mean? They're black, they're Hispanic, whatever, you know, but however. But let me go back to what Kevin Hart said about moving on. I mean, if the joke is racist, if the joke is offensive to us, I'm gonna just say this. I think a lot of that is relative. I think a lot of jokes that are made towards ethnic groups or towards people's particular social status or whatever, I think it's relative. You have some people that get offended and you have some people that are not offended. It depends on the person's personality. It depends on how they were raised. It depends on their worldview that will determine how they feel about a particular joke. Whether it was said by Kevin Hart, whether it was said by this Tony guy, whether it was said by Cat Williams or whatever, I think the jokes are relative in terms of how they're interpreted. If you are a sensitive person, or if you are a person that may have been going through some situations in your life, which is interesting to me, right? Because let me cut that off a little bit. It's interesting to me and crazy to me that a person who's super sensitive would go to a comedy show. Knowing that this particular comedian may say some things that may be offensive to them. And yet they'll go to the comedy show anyway. What are you going there for? Are you going there to laugh and take the load off? Or are you going there to be a what they call them, huckster or a I forget what they call them anyway. But to me, you're a knucklehead. You go there and I mean, are you going there to laugh? Or are you going there to pick on the heckler? That's what they call them. You going there to heckle the comedian. For what? You paid your money. Why would you go in there to heckle the comedian? If they're going to say something to you that's offensive to your sensitive end, why would you do that? It's a way. See, that's what's annoying to me. I've seen so many comedy clips, sketch clips where a comedian will be cracking on some people or whatever, and they get offended and they get up and want to. I've seen videos where they get up on the stage and try to assault the comedian. Now, I don't know if those were acts, part of the act, or real. I would argue a lot of it was real. Was real. Could have been staged, but I would argue some of it was real because people getting upset and they're so super sensitive. Now, let me say this. I grew up in an era where I grew up in Richard Pryor era. I grew up in the Eddie Murphy era. I grew up in the Red Fox era. Now, when Red Fox was around, actually, I was too young to hear any of his stuff anyway, but later on, I started listening in on some of the things he was saying. And if Red Fox, and Eddie Murphy, and Richard Pryor were Richard Pryor and Red Fox were alive today, let's move Eddie Murphy out of the way. If Richard Pryor and Red Fox were alive today and were making the jokes today like they made back in those days in the 70s and the 80s, man, oh my goodness, they get canceled just like that. And the question is why? See, I grew up in an era where you had to have thick skin. You had to have thick skin. What was that other guy? Andrew Dice Clay? I mean, I never heard much of his comedy. I never really heard much of his comedy. All I heard was bits and clips of his comedy, and yet I would argue he was one of the first to become a part of the growing cancel culture bullcrap, because next thing I know, he was banned, he was gone, and it's like, what is it that he did or said that caused it to be that way? And apparently, I guess he made some jokes about gays and so forth, and it was just too much, and they just said, okay, we're going to get rid of this guy. And my thing is like this. I grew up in a time where you had to have thick skin, okay? You had to have thick skin. Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy, and I'll bring back, Richard Pryor, and Red Fox, and then I'll maybe bring Eddie Murphy back in there. They talked about people all the time. And they talked about gay people. Eddie Murphy talked about gay people. Y'all know, anybody, you know what I'm talking about. Talk about gay people. Richard Pryor, I don't think Richard Pryor ever talked about gay people. But he talked about white people all the time. He cracked on white people all the time. Eddie Murphy, every now and then, he'll crack on white people. But they talked about people, and they talked about people groups all the time. And I'm pretty sure some of these people groups got offended, but it wasn't about canceling people and all this kind of stuff. It's like, okay, man, look, you cracking on me. Okay, it's funny. I might not like it, but it's funny. And then you move on. You move on. It's comedy. It's comedy, and it is what it is. But when we start, and I've said this before, but I wanted to bring this back in. When we start trying to control comedians and tell comedians what they can and cannot say, then in my opinion, it ceases to be funny. It ceases to be really funny like it should be, and listening in on Kevin Hart, I think he was being a little. I agree with a lot of what he was saying, but I think he was restraining himself a little bit because he's a part of that of the elitists, if you will, and he has to be careful. Okay, he has to be careful what he says. But what he was saying, a lot of it was true. If it's supposedly offensive, move on. Let's move on, man. Okay, you said something's offensive, but let's move on. Let's not sit up here and try to have a show about what this man said about George Floyd, whatever it was he said. Okay, let's not have a big hoopla about it and have a conversation about it. Why? Can't we just say, oh, man, I didn't like the joke, but let me move on? That's essentially what Kevin Hart was saying. I didn't like your joke, but let me, not us, let me move on, because at the end of the day, I still got to go to work. I still have to pay bills. I still have to take care of my family. I still have to eat. I still have to sit on the toilet and boo-boo. I have to do these things, man. I got to go on my life. I don't want to sit up here and have a discussion that's going to cost some forum or whatever thousands of dollars to put on to have a discussion about what this man said about George Floyd. What joke he said about George Floyd. It makes no sense whatsoever. It's illogical. It's stupid, really, at the end of the day. Let's move on, Kevin Hart is basically saying. Let's move on. Let's us move on. And to bigger and better things. Or else, at us blacks folks, we ain't gonna never rise above the economic and social and I ain't gonna even say political, because there's so many black politicians out here, it's ridiculous, but we still ain't got nowhere. We'll never rise above the social and economic abyss that we're in if we constantly keep being overly sensitive about what somebody said, about some joke somebody said, about somebody that looked like you. We'll never rise above it. We'll always be at the bottom of, well, let me just say it like this. I don't like to say we. I say them. They were all, because I refuse to let that stuff hinder me. Okay, you say what you want to say, man. I didn't like it, but I'm moving on. I'm going to get what I've got. I'm going to get what God got for me. I ain't going to let that stupid stuff stop me. But anyway, these group of black people are going to they're going to stay in the pit, the abyss, the social and economic abyss today, and they constantly keep latching on to every little thing somebody say that they perceive to be racist. That's racist. Oh, why they don't like us? Why don't they like us? Because you an idiot. That's why. Okay? That's why they don't like you. Because you a crybaby idiot. You crying and boo-hooing that they don't like you, and rather than moving on with your life. So what? They don't like you. I don't care. I don't like them either. Let me move on, man. Let me move on. Let me better myself. And then when I get to where I want to be, I'll brag and say, look at me and look at you. Look at me and look at you. Look at me and look at you. But if I'm constantly sitting up booing and crying and farting and pooting about what they said about somebody else that I'm not even associated with, other than the fact that they have the same skin color that I have, guess what? I'm never going to rise above it. Because I'm too busy thinking about that. I'm too busy thinking about what they said. I'm too busy feeling sad. I'm too busy feeling insecure about who I am. You see how silly that is, man? It's silly. And it doesn't matter whether you're black, white, Hispanic, Asian. It doesn't even matter, man. At the end of the day, in my opinion, at the end of the day, you have to be secure within yourself. You have to be secure with your own strengths and gifts and talents and build off of that. You have to. I believe it's individual. It comes down to individual, regardless of your ethnic group. It comes down to individuality. And let me sum this up, because this went longer than normal. The whole idea of individuality is being stripped away bit by bit by bit by bit. The Marxists, the communists, and all of the rest that have infiltrated our institutions, yeah, I'm going there. Because that's what communism is all about. Communism is everybody sharing everything together and looking alike and talking alike and thinking alike. Communists hate individuality. You want to know why they hate? And they want everybody to be together. They call it collectivism. You want to know why they call it collectivism? You want to know why they do that? You want to know why the major communists do that? It isn't because they care. They want collectivism and no individuality, because when you're an individual, you're thinking outside the box that they've created for you. They don't want individuality. That's an American concept. But when you're an individual, that means you break out of the narrative that they've spun for you, that they've created for you, and you start thinking, man, something what they're saying ain't right. Let me read this book. Let me go over here. Let me go over and see what. See, they don't like that. They don't like individuals. They want everybody to think alike, talk alike, look alike, smell alike, dress alike. That's inhuman. We're not ants. We're not a colony of ants. They think we are, but if you're an individual, you will know you're not. But unfortunately, among blacks in America, we have an ant mentality, man. A lot of them have an ant mentality. And they want everybody else to have the same ant mentality that they have. Oh, you got to think alike, talk alike, look alike. If you're a conservative, you ain't one of us. If you think like that, you ain't one of us. You got to believe every white person is racist. You got to believe that we're all victims in America, and we're all victims of systemic racism and white supremacy. Ugh. You got to believe that. If you don't believe it, you ain't a part of our group. Well, bye. Toodaloo. I don't want to be a part of your group, because your group is going straight to the abyss where y'all been for the longest. But you're going to go deeper down into the abyss, the invisible parts of the abyss, if you stay there with that mindset. Anyway, that's what I think. People can call it. They can whatever you want to think about Kevin Hart, whatever you want to think about this other guy, whatever it is. But I wanted to make those points about comedy and the way comedy was back then, and how it is now, because I think that it needs. I think those things need to be discussed. And I think these comedians, I said this before, I repeat it, need to be. They need to be allowed to be the comedians that they want to be. They want to be able to break out the box, man. Okay. And now we got, but anyway, that's what I have to say about that. What do you guys think? Leave your comments in the comment section below. Like, share, and subscribe to my channel. God bless you all. See you again.